Welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at a product sent out by Element Optics. This is their 3 to 18 by 50 Titan. Very excited about this. This 3 to 18 is something I've had in my possession for a little while now. It's been on multiple rifles. You'll see that. I'm going to start off by just telling you a little bit how to zero it. I actually cover this better in the 5 to 25 video if you really need some more of those details. But first you take off that top screw and it's threaded in. You don't need any tools for that portion. If you're going to slip the zero stop around, slip it to engage the other lip. Go ahead and throw it on the zero marker with the witness line, and then again, no tool needed. You can thread in the top cap all the way down. So that's what I did to zero it each time, and I think it's actually a really nice system. It's very simple. The turrets themselves, I can just tell you, such as what you're seeing there, the dials, everything has a really good texture to it. So if your hands are slippery or cold or just wet and in some sort of condition, humid out, that's what I experienced many times. There's plenty of grip on top of those easy to reset turrets. So speaking of turrets and dialing, I like to dial out, and so I threw it on a 22. Actually, a number of times I threw it on a 22 to test it out and do some longer distance shooting, and I started out a little bit closer, and then I went to 325. 325 isn't crazy far for a 22 nowadays. This optic has 43 mils of internal elevation, which is fantastic, and using the Normatak 40 match that I was shooting here, I was only using 15 of those mils, way too easy on a 12-inch target, and so I pushed it back here in a little bit. You'll see out to 630 yards using an IPSC target, which is an appropriate size target for 630 yards with a 22 and any level of wind. All right, I have my Element Titan 3 to 18. I'm going to go ahead and dial 31 mils, which with this 50 MOA base, that's as much as I can get out of it, which is a lot. 31 mils is a lot. If I put some infinity type rings on here or some no limits FX rings, obviously I could go up closer to that full range of 43 mils. And actually my data for 630 yards with my 22 shooting Normatak, that is 43 mils. That's what I need. And so I'm just going to dial 31 and then hold over an additional about 12. There it is. All right, I know I won't get it in the first shot, not likely anyways, but I think I can get it within the mag. It takes me a little bit. The wind did pick up. This flag and those flags, not really doing the same thing. I wish they were all doing what that flag is doing over there. It's like up to 7 miles an hour. For 22 at 630 yards, that's pretty rough, but I'm gonna just give it a shot and we'll see if I can make it within the mag on an IDPA type target. There's a hit. So honestly, it was a little too windy on this particular day. Went 2 for 10. I need to redo this when it's not so windy. Here's another hit. All right, so I'm at the 1,000-yard line, and I'm shooting just a little past 1,000 up to a berm. And I'm looking through the glass. It is not quite sundown. We still have an hour left, but it's dark enough. Sun's behind the trees, basically. And so now is a really good time to get in the glass and start looking at it, looking at color, kind of seeing if there's any haze at the edges or any distortions on the edges, dialing it out as far as I can go with different rifles. I'm actually going to put it on another rifle here in a little bit and dial it out really far and just see what I think of the glass as I dial it out, kind of towards the extremes. And right now, just looking at 1,000, something interesting you might find useful to know. So I'm looking at some clay pigeons I've been shooting at, and if you're interested with this 308 with a 20-inch, my data was, let's see, that was 11.7, and those are just slightly closer. Those are at 1,015 yards. But at 1,015 yards, the reticle is actually like the dot when I dial out there to a clay pigeon. A clay pigeon is the perfect size at 1,015 yards. I can put that dot right in there and just barely see orange around it, so it's very convenient. I like that. So I think you need about 18 power to make out a clay pigeon really well, unless you have a very small center dot. This one, clay pigeon size target or circle on your paper, whatever you're shooting at. I'm shooting at both. I have some steel, I have some minute angle targets down there, and then I have a big IDPA and then some paper as well. And I'm actually really happy. I just shot a 1 MOA group It's not windy at all. Tonight's pretty clear, other than humidity being very, very high. And the glass has been pretty good, actually, guys. I'm really happy with it. Right now, only dialed at 11.6 where I'm at right now. So I'm pretty much center of the glass. It should look really good, but it does. And so I just want to throw that out there, that I'm very happy with what I'm seeing. And the reticle works great. I've had to use the wind holds earlier in the day, and I like the wind holds. I really like dialing right to the target, and then the 1/2 mil increments have like kind of a little triangle as a marker, and it's been very useful because I've had to read the wind a lot today and go back and forth, and those little markers, those half triangles, it's easy to pick up which ones they are because they stick up vertically. They're on top of the reticle on the horizontal lines, and so it's very easy to pick up, and that was useful today as I was reading wind going back and forth. Another thing I really like about this reticle is that it's kind of unique. I don't think I've seen this in too many reticles. At each mil marker, if you're using a little bit of holdover as well and not just dialing right there, it also has a center dot at the mil markers going down on the stadia, up and down. And so those center dots are very useful. If you know you are a mil low, you once again have a dot to use as an aiming feature rather than a line or something big and bulky. And so it's just really useful for people who like the dot. I'm one of those people. I prefer it, especially if I'm target shooting, but even shooting on steel or something a little bigger, it just opens up the field of view and it doesn't block it with a big thick reticle. And so I think it's pretty cool that you can do that. Very versatile reticle, and for hunting, competitive shooting, target shooting to the degree that I'm doing it right now, very, very useful, especially being in a first focal plane. It's a very usable reticle, 3 to 18 magnification range, 50 power, or 50, sorry, I cannot talk today, the 50 millimeter objective. The objective has plenty of light. There's no issues with that at all. I can't even tell the difference between some of my bigger optics that have 56 millimeters and this right now. I've put them side by side, and honestly, I can't tell the difference. Maybe when it's a little dark, when it gets a little darker, I'll know, but right now looks the same. The air quality is not great, I'll tell you that. The parallax is very, very good. I was able to fine-tune that image, and I really needed that tonight. I wanted to shoot some really tight groups. I wanted to confirm some data since there's no wind at the moment, and I needed the parallax to be extremely tight. And only 3 to 18 magnification, that's not super far. It's not a 35 power, but I need the parallax to be functional, and it's very smooth. It's got a nice texture to it, and being able to sharpen up that image just really crystal clear in good quality glass matters. And so I had the confidence at least to get that out of it. All right, so moving from 18 power down to, let's go to about 12 power. At about 12 power, the glass is still very usable. I can use the holdover line down to 15 mils down. Technically I can see 16, but functionally I could use 15 mils of holdover at 12 power, and the bottom of the glass, guys, is not milky, doesn't look bad, and even when I dial it up quite a bit more, it doesn't look bad. It's not distorted. And going, let's see, okay, the full reticle is visible, and I'm going to say right about 10 power. Right about 10 power, that's 20 mils of holdover if you're a holdovers person, or if you dial out all your internal elevation and then you need to hold over. The bottom of the glass looks great. Of course, I'm backing off magnification quite a bit, but 10 power is still plenty to shoot 1,000 yards, especially on big steel targets. And it looks like that's going to work just perfectly. No image issues as far as I can tell. No warping. The numbers themselves look good. The reticle looks good. That is one thing that happens, is the reticle itself kind of looks goofy with really cheap, bad glass, or if it's been etched poorly. There's just some things you'll notice. All right, and all the way down to 3 power. The field of view is great, and I think just for fun, just to show you what's possible, I'm just going to go to, I have my illumination setting at 5 just for fun. I have my reticle at 5 power. Let's put it at 5 power. I just want to show you that even at 5 power, this reticle is usable at over 1,000 yards. If you have good data, if you know your stuff, you have huge field of view. I can still see my IDPA target. I can see how it moves, how it shakes back and forth. Obviously, I can hear it too. Hopefully you can hear it. Here we go, 1,027 yards on 5 power. All right, there it is. And so I just wanted to do that just to show you guys that if you have good data, if you know what you're doing ahead of time, you can really back off the magnification. And 3 to 18, I mean, it's all usable. I could probably go down to 3 power. I could certainly go up to 18 power as long as it's not really hot and the mirage is really bad. I just wanted to show you that the reticle is very, very usable, and if you have good data, you can use that thing in so many different scenarios, so many different ways. You could take quick shots, you could take hunting shots on a fly, or PRS, you know, people who are actually competing. Very usable reticle, and I love it. I really like it quite a bit. Let's try it at 3 power. I'll admit it's a little trickier on 3 power. 5 power, just enough for me to grab onto and see all that. But even that at 3 power, I could tell which way my target is swinging. And so magnification wise, it's plenty enough. Light wise, it's plenty enough. Elevation, huge elevation. Illumination, great. I just don't have any complaints about it. I think it's a great scope. I want this scope on lots of guns. All right, 18 power. Too easy. All right, I'm just letting the barrel cool down a little bit. I have the Element Titan 3 to 18 zeroed on my Savage. That's a Savage Model 10, kind of an oldie action, but it shoots well. It's in 308 and I like it. I can afford to shoot it. And when I zeroed it, this is a clean barrel and everything. I just did some M80, so first on the far left there, not impressive, but it is what it is. Some M80 just to get the barrel fouled, honestly. Then I went to the middle there. There's 5 shots, and that's Federal 175 grain SMKs. Usually shoots pretty well, and that's usually what I try to run out to 1,000 yards. It's what I can get the most of. And there's 1 flyer there, and there's 4 shots in the same hole. It's about a 1/2 inch group if you take out that flyer, and then another group there with 3 in the same hole and then 2 off to the side. Not sure why that happened, but honestly guys, on my channel, the stuff that I'm doing, stuff I'm shooting at, PRS, a little bit of competition, maybe even some hunting, these are fine. I don't need to have an 8th MOA rifle to enjoy it, to have fun, or to shoot MOA sized targets out to 1,000 yards. In fact, this rifle, when I do my part, if I am a 1/2 MOA shooter, it has shot several times 1/2 MOA groups, 5-shot groups at 1,000 or 1,000 plus. And so I'm pretty happy with a 308 rifle that can perform that well for a $450 barreled action. It's doing fine, sitting in an Orcs chassis, and now I have this on top, and I was really impressed because I can still get 25 mils of elevation, and I only have a 20 MOA rail. So if you think about that, for a 308, that is far, far beyond the range that most people are ever going to take a 308. So I'm very happy with that. I love having the extra elevation just in case I want to do something crazy if I'm out in the desert somewhere, or I just want to see what I can do with the 308. This has enough elevation with just a 20 MOA rail where I'm still nice and centered up in the glass, so the glass quality, clarity is very, very good. I've already had it zeroed on the 22 where I was really maxing out the internal elevation, and I was a little bit closer to the extreme ends range, and even when I was holding at the bottom of the glass for extreme holdovers, it was still great. And so I think the glass quality has impressed me. I'm very happy with it. It is only a 3 to 18, so it's not a 30 power, it's not a 35 power. Maybe at those magnification ranges, it would be a little bit more apparent that the glass isn't perfect, but for my uses, I'm very, very happy with it. And I think it's an extremely impressive optic at the price point. What it's providing in there, this is a good matchup on the 308. Really, really happy with it. Obviously, I can't compare and I can't go over every single attribute of every optic, but I just want to touch on the things that you are going to use and things that you for sure will notice. And one of the things I really notice is that they did a good job with textures, knurling, friction, lubricity in the turrets and the dials themselves. Looking at the magnification as well as the illumination, they just work really nicely. So here's a shot of the illumination. I was having a little bit of trouble getting it to focus as far as the camera, getting that to focus very well. And so I just closed the scope cap on the objective there, and so you can see what the illumination looks like all the way down to 3 power and then back up to 18 power. It does not bleed over. This is an important point for you to hear. It doesn't bleed over the way that the camera makes it appear. That is just an issue with lenses and cameras, particularly this little DJI Osmo camera. Didn't focus quite as tight as I would have liked, but the image does not bleed. It's very, very tight. Good job in the illumination. 6 settings with off in between. It's something that I use just, primarily in the morning or afternoon when it's a little darker out, and not super often, but it's nice to have it on there. It's a great deal at a price point wise. It's a great deal on this optic. Now, my wife and I like to shoot NRL 22 together a little bit. She's just recently gotten into this. It's been really fun, and this is an ideal 22 optic, especially for NRL 22. Now, in NRL 22, you're not necessarily going to go, beyond 500 yards or anything like that, but if you're going to shoot an X match, this is a great 22 optic. 18 power is plenty enough to see lots of those really tiny little targets, the 1/4 inch targets, and the dot size is appropriate for lining it up on those types of targets as well, shooting little tiny groups of paper, and also seeing your holes. At 100 yards, I had no issues whatsoever seeing my 22 holes. It was not hard, and it was easy to spot my splash in the dirt or other places, even at 200 yards, which in this frame right here, I'm shooting at 200 yards off a Sunway Photo tripod, messing around with their SM86 clamp a little bit, and it was easy for me to see my impacts on steel, and I was not all the way maxed out most of the time. It's plenty enough magnification. If that's a concern for you, I promise you, 18 is more than you're going to use on a hot day. You don't need that much, and I'm going to probably show you at some point in this review a little bit of shooting on 3 power, 5 power at over 1,000 yards. Maybe I already showed it in the review. I just want to make the point that magnification-wise, it's plenty enough. During the summertime, I very often do throw on sunshades, and I'll leave them on, especially if I'm going to be shooting during midday pretty often. During the early morning, later afternoon, as long as the sun isn't glaring me out, I usually take them off. It does add to the overall length of the optic, makes it look a little bit longer and bigger, but it's functional and it does exactly what it's supposed to do. Let's talk a little bit more about some of these features. So there is an assist, a throw lever assist, and it's really nice to have. I don't think you have to have it because the knurling and the texture of the actual ring, the magnification ring, is very aggressive. It would be easy to grab onto. I appreciate that, especially on hot summer days when my hands might be a little wet or sweaty or it's humid. And then in the wintertime, having something easy to grab onto, but the little cattail nub on there really does the trick. All right, looking at the reticle focus, that's a really important thing. You need your reticle to be nice and tight and clean. And so I had plenty of range of travel. Every dial, every knob on this thing is built with a proper texture to grab onto it and use it. And it's got a good fluidity to it. It moves nicely and smoothly without really cranking on it. As soon as you get it set, throw your scope cap cover right back on there and it'll help retain it. It's not something you'll use all the time, but when you do need it, you really need it, and you need it to be clear. So when people ask, are the turrets reliable? Are they trustworthy? Are they tactile? Yes is the answer to all that. You can go ahead and listen. Elevation and windage both sound the same to me. They feel the same to me. Very, very good. And all my data lined up with the other optics that I've run in the past, so I see no issues with them. But can we just say 43 mils of internal E is crazy, and I've used 42 of them on my 22 and tried it out. The only thing is that the turret gets a little bit more stiff. It doesn't feel exactly the same at the extreme range end, and you kind of shouldn't use an optic in the extreme ends of range either. All right, now I'm going to the parallax knob here. It goes down to 10 meters and then up to infinity, and you'll notice that as I'm using that on the right side image there with a little bit of illumination on, it gets a little blurry, gets a little more clear. Very nice dial, has a good aggressive texture to it. Again, that's something I like. I didn't feel like I was fighting the parallax knob to do its job, and I noticed the results and the effects even at extended ranges. I don't have time to go over every single factor. It's already over a 20-minute video, I'm sure, and so I can't compare this perfectly with the 5-25 Titan that I've already reviewed on my channel, but I'll tell you that if you're trying to decide between the 3-18 and the 5-25, I'm going to have a separate video dedicated to that, talking about the two benefits and maybe some reasons to go with one over another depending on how you're using an optic. But I'll tell you, I've used this optic in low light, lots of light, sunshade on, sunshade off. I've used the extreme range of internal travel on the 22, the full 43 mils, and kind of tested out, does the glass diminish if it's maxed out on internal elevation, and then also magnification all the way up. I've kind of done everything I can. I put it on a 308, that's a stompy little rifle. Those element rings held up perfectly, no slippage, no movement. Using the torque specs they gave me, it didn't damage the image quality at all. I've had a really good experience with the optics so far, but if you're trying to pick between the 3-18 and the 5-25, and I need to make a decision for you right now without knowing you and knowing your situation, I'm going to say for most people, I'm going to push them towards the 3-18. I think, in my opinion, 3-18 is enough for everybody. It does everything you need to. This one has enough internal elevation. If you're going to do some ELR shooting, it's going to get you out there. It has illumination, which is extra in my book. It has a fantastic reticle. It just does everything really, really well. And so if you're trying to make a decision between the 5-25 and 3-18 and you just don't know, in my book, the 3-18 is kind of the master of all. It can do everything well. It can hunt well. It can compete well. It can target shoot well. They've designed the reticle and the glass, the components of the optic to be something that's going to work for just most people right off the bat. And I think you're going to want one. Even if you get to the 5-25, I have a 5-25. Even having it, I also want the 3-18. So maybe take a look at both of them. The Titan series in general is a very high quality optic, and I can get behind it for all those applications. Go ahead and comment down below if you have either one of them and what your experience has been. Thanks, Element, for making a great optic.